Watch her hands shake as she pulls out her last $20. That's her brother's medicine. That's their food for the week. That's the only thing standing between them and the streets. And she's about to give it to a complete stranger she just met 5 minutes ago. Her boss is screaming, threatening to call the police. Everyone in the restaurant is staring. She's about to get fired and lose everything. But she can't stop her hand from moving. And what happens next, when that stranger stands up and reveals who they really are? It's going to blow your mind. Don't you dare skip this story. Because by the end, you'll understand why sometimes losing everything is exactly how you find everything.
Stay with me.
Welcome to the story room. While you are here, please hit the subscribe button and comment your view on the story and where you're watching from. Let me tell you about a moment that changed everything. A moment when one person had to choose between surviving and being kind. And that choice, that single decision, created a miracle nobody saw coming. Her name was Rachel Hayes, 24 years old, working the evening shift at a fancy restaurant in downtown Chicago called the Golden Spoon. You know the type of place I'm talking about. White tablecloths, candles on every table, meals that cost more than most people make in a day. The kind of restaurant where rich people go to feel important and servers go to feel invisible. Rachel wasn't supposed to be there. Not really. Just 10 months earlier, she was finishing her nursing degree at Northwestern University. She had dreams, big dreams. She wanted to help people. She wanted to make a difference. She could see her whole future laid out in front of her like a roadmap. Then everything fell apart. One foggy December morning, her parents were driving to visit her at school. A semi-truck driver fell asleep at the wheel and crossed the center line. Just like that, in one horrible moment, Rachel's mom and dad were gone, vanished from this world. And Rachel's entire life shattered into a million pieces. But here's the thing. Rachel wasn't alone in this world. She had her little brother, Daniel. He was only 13 years old. Sweet kid who loved basketball and wanted to be an engineer someday. Daniel had been in the back seat during the accident. He survived, but his right leg was crushed so badly the doctors said he needed multiple surgeries. Expensive surgeries. The kind that insurance only pays part of. The kind that costs tens of thousands of dollars that Rachel didn't have. So, Rachel made a choice. She dropped out of school with only one semester left until graduation. She sold everything her parents owned. Their car, their furniture, everything. She moved Daniel and herself into a tiny apartment on the south side of Chicago where the rent was cheap and the heating barely worked. And she took every shift she could get at the Golden Spoon, working under a manager named Victor Kane. Victor was the kind of man who smiled at customers like they were royalty and treated his staff like they were dirt under his shoes. 35 years old. Always wearing too much cologne, always flexing whatever tiny bit of power he had. He loved making people feel small. It made him feel big. This particular Wednesday night, Rachel was beyond exhausted. The kind of tired that settles into your bones and makes you feel like you're moving underwater. She had exactly $20 in her pocket, a cash tip from lunch that she'd tucked into her apron. That $20 was everything. It was her bus fare home. It was the groceries she planned to buy on the way. It was Daniel's lunch money for school tomorrow. It was all she had until payday 5 days away. The restaurant was packed. Business people celebrating deals. Couples on dates. Tourists who thought they were eating authentic Chicago cuisine. Rachel moved between the tables like a ghost, smiling automatically, pouring water, pretending her world wasn't falling apart. Then the door opened. An old woman walked in from the cold. She must have been in her late 70s, maybe older. Her coat looked expensive once, you could tell by the fabric, but now it was threadbare and worn. Her gray hair was messy from the wind. She walked slowly, carefully, like every step hurt. No purse. No umbrella. Just an old woman who looked lost. Victor spotted her immediately. He snapped his fingers at Rachel, loud enough that nearby tables looked over. Rachel felt her face burn with embarrassment. "Seat her in the back corner," Victor said, not even trying to keep his voice down. "And if she doesn't order something expensive within 5 minutes, get rid of her." I don't need homeless people in here scaring away paying customers. Rachel felt something twist in her stomach. She's a customer, Victor. She just came in from the cold. She's bad for business. Victor shot back. Back corner.
Now.
Rachel took a menu and walked over to the old woman. Up close, she could see the woman was shivering. Not just from cold, but from something deeper.
Exhaustion, maybe.
Or sadness. Or both. Good evening, ma'am, Rachel said, and she meant it. She gave the woman a real smile, the first genuine one she'd managed all night. Let's get you somewhere warm. Rachel completely ignored Victor's orders. Instead of the back corner, she led the old woman to a table right next to the fireplace. The best spot in the whole restaurant. The table they usually saved for people who tipped $100 or more. The old woman looked surprised. Grateful. Thank you, dear. You're very kind. Can I get you some tea? Coffee? Something to warm you up. Just water, please, the woman said. Her voice was rough, like she hadn't talked to anyone in days. And do you have soup? Anything hot would be wonderful. We have chicken noodle soup. It's actually really good. I'll bring you a big bowl. As Rachel walked away, she could feel Victor's angry stare burning into her back. She knew she'd pay for this later. Putting someone Victor called a vagrant in the premium spot during dinner rush. But when she glanced back at the old woman warming her hands by the fire, Rachel couldn't make herself regret it. She brought the soup with extra crackers on the side, even though they cost extra. She'd pay the difference from her tips if Victor noticed. The old woman ate slowly, savoring every spoonful like it was the most delicious thing she'd ever tasted. Rachel kept checking on her between other tables. Something about this woman reminded Rachel of her own grandmother, who'd passed away years ago. Same gentle eyes. Same quiet dignity. And that's when everything changed. When the old woman finally finished her soup, she sat back with a deep, satisfied sigh. She looked more peaceful now. Warmer. Almost content. She caught Rachel's eye and raised her hand gently. The check, please, dear. Rachel printed the bill. $14.50 with tax. She placed it in the black folder and set it on the table with a smile. The old woman reached into her coat pocket. Then she checked her other pocket, then her pants pockets. Rachel watched as the woman's movements became faster, more frantic, more desperate. Rachel's heart sank.
She knew that panic.
She'd felt it herself standing at the pharmacy counter trying to buy Daniel's medication and realizing she was $5 short. I don't understand, the old woman whispered, her face going pale. My wallet. I had it this morning. I must have lost it somewhere. Before Rachel could say anything, before she could tell the woman it was okay, Victor appeared like a shark smelling blood in the water. Problem here? Victor's voice was loud. Deliberately loud. People at nearby tables stopped talking and turned to look. The old woman looked up, humiliated. I seem to have lost my wallet, sir. I apologize. If I could perhaps make a phone call, or come back tomorrow.
Victor actually laughed.
Out loud. Come back tomorrow? Lady, that's the oldest trick in the book. You eat the food, you pay for the food. That's how this works. I'm not trying to cheat anyone. Rachel. Victor turned to her with a cold smile. Call the police. We've got a dine and dash situation here. The entire restaurant went silent. You know that awful feeling when something uncomfortable is happening and everyone pretends not to watch, but they're absolutely watching? That's what happened. Conversation stopped. Silverware stopped clinking. Even the kitchen went quiet. The old woman was shaking now, and Rachel couldn't tell if it was from cold or fear or shame. Probably all three. She was nearly 80 years old, and Victor was threatening to have her arrested over a bowl of soup. And if you're enjoying this story so far, don't forget to subscribe, because this is only the beginning. Victor, stop, Rachel said, stepping between them. This is ridiculous. Look at her. She's not a criminal. She just lost her wallet. That's not your decision to make, Victor snapped. This is my restaurant, and I'm not running a charity for people who... It's $14. Rachel's voice came out louder than she intended. $14 for soup. Then you pay it, Victor said, and his smile got wider. He was enjoying this. If you're so concerned, you pay for her. Otherwise, step aside and let me handle this. The words hung in the air like a challenge. Rachel looked at Victor's smug face. She looked at the old woman's trembling hands. She thought about Daniel at home waiting for her. She thought about the $20 in her pocket, her bus fare, her groceries, her brother's lunch money, her only safety net until payday. If she gave Victor that money, she'd have to walk home. 3 miles in the freezing cold. She'd arrive after midnight. She wouldn't be able to buy bread or milk. Daniel would ask if she'd eaten dinner, and Rachel would have to lie again. Tell him she ate at work when really she hadn't had a meal since yesterday morning. The smart thing, the logical thing, would be to walk away. To let Victor call the police and let them sort it out. To protect herself first because nobody else was going to protect her. But Rachel couldn't stop seeing her grandmother's face in this stranger's eyes. Yes, Rachel heard herself say. I'll pay for her. Her hands were shaking as she reached into her apron. She pulled out the crumpled $20 bill. All she had in the entire world. She smoothed it out on the table and placed it in the bill folder.
There.
Paid in full. Victor snatched up the folder and counted the money twice like he couldn't believe it. When he looked up at Rachel, there was something ugly in his eyes. Not anger. Worse. Contempt. You just paid for a stranger's meal with your last $20, Victor said slowly. Do you have any idea how stupid that is? How are you getting home tonight, Rachel? How are you buying food for your brother? Do you think being nice is going to pay your bills? Rachel couldn't speak. Her throat was too tight. You know what? Victor continued. I've had enough of your attitude. You ignore my instructions. You waste time on customers who don't spend money. You just cost this restaurant. You're fired. Get your things and get out. The words hit Rachel like a punch to the stomach.
Fired.
No job meant no money for Daniel's surgery. No rent payment. No food. They'd lose the apartment. They'd be on the streets. Victor, please. Get out. Rachel looked around desperately, hoping someone would speak up. Would say this was unfair. But people just stared at their plates. The old woman was trying to stand, trying to say something, but her voice was too weak. Rachel untied her apron with numb fingers. She laid it carefully on the table, as if folding it properly would somehow preserve her dignity. Then she walked toward the door. Miss. The old woman's voice cracked. Miss, please wait. But Rachel couldn't stop. If she stopped, she'd cry. If she cried, Victor would see, and she couldn't give him that satisfaction. She pushed through the door into the freezing Chicago night. Behind her, the old woman struggled to her feet. She watched through the window as Rachel disappeared into the darkness. Then she turned and looked at Victor with eyes that had suddenly gone ice cold. Young man, the old woman said quietly, you just made the biggest mistake of your life. Victor snorted. Is that a threat, old lady? You want me to call the cops after all? No need, the old woman said calmly. She reached into her inner coat pocket. Not the one she'd checked before, but a hidden pocket inside. She pulled out a phone. Not just any phone, but the latest model in an elegant case. She dialed a number from memory. Gregory, it's me. Yes, I know it's late. Listen carefully. I need our legal team mobilized tonight. I want to purchase a building. She paused, her eyes never leaving Victor's face. The one at 2847 Michigan Avenue. The one that houses the Golden Spoon restaurant. I don't care what it costs. Triple the asking price if necessary. I want the deed by morning. Victor's face went from smug to confused to pale in about 5 seconds. The old woman made another call. And another. And another. With each call, Victor looked sicker. Other diners were watching now, phones out, recording. Finally, the old woman pocketed her phone and walked toward the door. She moved differently now, still slow, but with the bearing of someone used to being in charge. At the door, she turned back one last time. My name, she said clearly, is Catherine Winters. Perhaps you've heard of it. I own Winters Tech Corporation. We develop software systems for hospitals and medical facilities worldwide. We employ about 60,000 people across 40 countries. Victor's face went white as a sheet. And tomorrow morning, Catherine continued, you're going to wish you'd shown a little more kindness to that young lady. She walked out into the cold night, leaving Victor standing frozen in the middle of his restaurant, finally understanding that the homeless vagrant he'd just humiliated was one of the wealthiest women in America. Meanwhile, Rachel was walking through the freezing streets of Chicago. Every step was agony. Her cheap shoes had holes in them. She'd been meaning to buy new ones but kept putting it off because Daniel needed things more. She walked for over an hour. Past the bright downtown streets where people in expensive coats hurried between restaurants and bars. Past the neighborhoods where things got darker and quieter. Past the places where people looked more like her.
Tired. Worn down.
Just trying to survive another day. She passed a grocery store and stopped outside, staring through the window at the bread on the shelves. Her stomach cramped with hunger. She'd worked a 9-hour shift and eaten nothing except some crackers she'd snuck from the break room. But she had no money.
Zero.
Not even quarters for the bus. She kept walking. By the time Rachel reached their apartment building, it was almost midnight. The building was old and run down with peeling paint and a broken front door buzzer. Their unit was on the 4th floor. No elevator, of course. Rachel climbed the stairs on legs that felt like they might give out. She paused outside their door, taking a shaky breath. She had to compose herself. Daniel couldn't know. He blamed himself enough already for the medical bills, for Rachel dropping out of school, for everything. Rachel wiped her face, fixed her hair as best she could, and opened the door with a smile. Daniel, I'm home. The apartment was tiny. Just one bedroom that Daniel used, and a living room where Rachel slept on a futon. But it was clean. Rachel made sure of that. Clean, and as warm as they could afford. Daniel was on the couch, his injured leg propped up, doing homework. At 13, he had their father's serious eyes and their mother's gentle smile. When he saw Rachel, his face lit up. Rachel, I was getting worried. You're really late. Work was crazy tonight.
Busy.
You know how Wednesdays are. The lies came easily now. How is school?
Good.
We had a math test. I think I did okay.
He paused.
Did you get good tips tonight? Yeah, it was fine. Busy crowd. Rachel moved into their tiny kitchen, opening cabinets to hide her face. Did you eat dinner? I wasn't that hungry. I saved the leftover chicken for you. Rachel's heart broke. He was lying. He'd skipped dinner to save food for her, just like she'd been skipping meals to make sure he ate enough. I had a big meal at work, Rachel lied. The chef made extra, and let us have some. I'm stuffed. You eat the chicken, okay? You sure? Positive. Go ahead. While Daniel reheated the food, Rachel went to their small bathroom and looked at herself in the mirror. She looked terrible. Dark circles under her eyes. Hair a mess. She'd lost weight she couldn't afford to lose. But worse was the look in her own eyes.
Defeat. Despair.
The face of someone who'd been running on empty for too long and had finally hit the wall. She turned on the shower, not to get in, but to cover the sound. Then she let herself cry. Quiet, shaking sobs that she muffled with a towel. She gave herself exactly 5 minutes. 5 minutes to fall apart. Then she washed her face, pulled herself together, and went back out to be strong for Daniel. That night, lying on her futon after Daniel went to bed, Rachel stared at the ceiling and did math that didn't add up no matter how many times she calculated it. Rent due in 3 days, $1,100. Money in her account, $0. Daniel's neck surgery payment, $5,000. Groceries needed, at least $75. And now no job. No income. No way forward. She thought about the old woman at the restaurant. Had she done the right thing? $20 wouldn't have saved her. She was drowning in thousands of dollars of debt. But at least she'd have had something. But then she remembered the woman's trembling hands. The shame in her eyes. The way Victor had laughed at her.
No.
She'd done the right thing. Even if it cost her everything, she'd done the right thing. Rachel rolled over and tried to sleep, but sleep wouldn't come. What Rachel didn't know couldn't possibly know was that across the city in a penthouse overlooking Lake Michigan, Catherine Winters was making phone calls that would change Rachel's life forever. Catherine hadn't gone home after leaving the restaurant. She'd gone straight to her office. At 78 years old, she should have been retired, enjoying her golden years. But she'd built Winters Tech from nothing, and she couldn't quite let it go. Medical software, hospital management systems, patient care technology. Her company's systems ran in hospitals across the globe. She was worth approximately $4 billion. But she wasn't thinking about money. She was thinking about a young woman with kind eyes who'd given away her last $20 to save a stranger from humiliation. "Get me everything," Catherine told her assistant, James, over the phone. "I want to know about Rachel Hayes. I want to know about her family, her situation, everything. And James, I want solutions ready by morning." Rachel woke at 7 to her phone ringing. Unknown number. Probably a bill collector. She almost didn't answer. But what if it was a job opportunity? "Hello? Is this Rachel Hayes?" A professional man's voice. "Yes, this is Rachel. Miss Hayes, my name is James Morrison. I'm calling on behalf of Winters Tech Corporation. We have an unusual situation and need to speak with you in person. Would you be available to meet this morning at 9? Rachel sat up, confused. "Winters Tech? The software company? I think you have the wrong person. I didn't apply. This isn't about employment, Miss Hayes. This is about a personal matter. We'll send a car to pick you up at 8:30. Your address is 432 South Ashland, apartment 4B, correct?" How did they know where she lived? "Yes, but..." "Excellent. The car will be a black SUV. The driver's name is Michael. Please bring your brother Daniel with you. This concerns him as well." The line went dead. At 8:30, Rachel and Daniel stood by their apartment window watching the street. Daniel was nervous, fidgeting with his crutches. "What if it's about the hospital bills?" Daniel whispered. "What if they're going to sue us?" "They don't send fancy cars for that," Rachel said, trying to sound confident. Then a black SUV pulled up. Not a regular car or a taxi, but a luxury vehicle with a professional driver who got out and looked up at their building. They went downstairs. The driver, Michael, was kind and professional. He opened the door for them, made sure they were comfortable, asked if they needed anything. The car was warm and smelled like leather. So different from the cold buses Rachel was used to. They drove toward downtown, but instead of stopping at some office building, they pulled up in front of the Golden Spoon restaurant. Rachel's stomach dropped. "Why are we here?" "You'll see, miss," Michael said. The street in front of the restaurant was blocked off. Not with police cars, but with vehicles that made Rachel's jaw drop. Luxury cars lined both sides of the street. Mercedes, Audis, Teslas, at least 40 of them. And standing in front of the Golden Spoon, waiting, was a group of people in expensive business suits. Important-looking people. Media cameras. News reporters. And at the center of them all, looking healthy and rested and nothing like the trembling old woman from last night, was Catherine Winters. Rachel recognized her from news articles. One of Chicago's wealthiest people. The old woman from the restaurant. "Oh my God," Rachel whispered. Catherine saw her and smiled warmly. She walked over, and the entire crowd followed her like she was royalty. "Rachel," Catherine said, taking her hands. "Thank you for coming. And you must be Daniel." She turned to Rachel's brother. "Your sister told me you want to be an engineer. We'll have to talk about that." "I don't understand," Rachel said. "Last night you said your name was I didn't know you were." "I apologize for the deception," Catherine said. "I sometimes walk around the city without security. My wallet really was stolen, pickpocket on the train. Everything you saw was real, including your extraordinary kindness." The door to the Golden Spoon opened, and Victor stepped out. He looked like he hadn't slept. When he saw the crowd and the cameras, he froze. "Mr. Kane," Catherine said coldly, "I want to apologize for last night. If I'd known who you were—" "That's precisely the problem," Catherine interrupted. "If you'd known who I was, you would have treated me well. But you saw an old woman with no money, and you treated her like garbage. Worse, You fired the only person in your establishment who understood what hospitality actually means. Catherine turned to address the cameras and the crowd. Ladies and gentlemen, I want you all to meet Rachel Hayes. Last night, this young woman gave me her last $20. Money she needed to get home. Money she needed to feed herself and her brother. She couldn't stand to see someone humiliated over a bowl of soup. The crowd looked at Rachel with respect. Some were smiling. Camera flashes went off. Rachel, Catherine continued, I did some research last night. I learned about your parents, about Daniel's injury, about the medical bills and the dropped nursing degree and the 70-hour work weeks. I learned that you've been drowning, and yet you still chose kindness. She pulled an envelope from her jacket. As of 6 o'clock this morning, I own this building. I've terminated the Golden Spoon's lease. Mr. Kane no longer works here. Victor made a choking sound. But the building needs a tenant, Catherine said. Someone who understands that a restaurant should be a place of warmth and welcome. Someone who treats people like people, regardless of what's in their wallet. She held out the envelope to Rachel. I'm offering you a 5-year lease at $1 per year. You'll run this place however you want. We'll cover renovation costs, initial inventory, everything you need to start. Rachel couldn't move. Couldn't breathe. That's not all, Catherine said gently, turning to Daniel. Young man, I spoke with Dr. Robertson this morning. He's the best orthopedic surgeon in the Midwest. He's agreed to perform your surgery next week at no cost. All of it. Physical therapy included. Daniel burst into tears. And Rachel, Catherine continued, Winters Tech would like to offer you a scholarship. Full tuition and living expenses to finish your nursing degree. You can go back to school. You can become the nurse you wanted to be. Rachel's legs gave out. She would have fallen if Catherine hadn't steadied her. Why? Rachel whispered. Why are you doing this? Catherine's eyes grew misty. Because 40 years ago, I was a young woman with nothing. I was trying to start a business, and I couldn't afford to eat. A waiter named Joseph bought me a meal with his own money. He didn't know me. He just saw someone who needed help. She smiled. I never forgot him. I looked for him for years, tried to repay him, but he'd passed away. I couldn't repay his kindness, but I can pay it forward through you. 8 months later, Rachel stood in front of what used to be the Golden Spoon. The sign was different now. It read Joseph's Kitchen in warm, welcoming letters, named after the waiter who'd helped Catherine so many years ago. The restaurant was beautiful. They'd kept the fireplace, but transformed everything else. Warm wood tables. Local art on the walls, including photographs Daniel had taken during his physical therapy sessions. A kitchen that smelled like comfort food and home. But the most important feature was the table by the fireplace. A small brass plaque read, This table is reserved for anyone who needs a meal. No questions asked. No payment required. Because everyone deserves kindness. Every single day, that table served free meals. Sometimes it was a homeless veteran. Sometimes it was a single parent stretched too thin. Sometimes it was a college student who'd run out of money. Rachel never asked questions. She just brought food and treated them with dignity. The restaurant was more successful than Rachel ever imagined. People loved the idea of a place built on kindness. They came for the food but stayed for the feeling, the sense that they were part of something good. Daniel was thriving. His surgery had been successful. After months of physical therapy, he could walk without crutches. He was taking advanced math classes and talking about engineering programs at universities. And Rachel, she was back in school, taking online nursing classes. It was hard balancing school and the restaurant, but it was possible now. She wasn't drowning anymore. She could breathe. On this particular evening, a cold Tuesday, Rachel was standing at the host stand when the door opened. A young man came in, shaking snow from his jacket. He looked exhausted, worried. His coat was too thin for Chicago winter. "Excuse me," he said hesitantly. "I saw the sign about the free table. I don't usually. I'm not homeless. My daughter's in the hospital, and I spent everything on her treatment, and I haven't eaten since yesterday, and I'm sorry. This is embarrassing." You don't need to explain, Rachel said gently, taking his arm. Come with me. Let's get you warm and fed. She led him to the table by the fireplace and brought him a hot meal. The man cried as he ate, not from sadness, but from relief. From the simple grace of being helped when you need it most. As Rachel turned to check on other tables, she saw Catherine sitting in her usual corner. She came by at least once a week, always quiet, always generous with the staff. Catherine caught her eye and smiled, giving a small nod of approval. Later, as the dinner rush ended, Catherine came to the counter where Rachel was reviewing receipts. You've done something beautiful here, Catherine said. Joseph would be proud. I hope so, Rachel said. I wish I could have thanked him. Catherine pulled out her wallet and removed something. A worn, faded $20 bill in a protective sleeve. This is the $20 you gave me 8 months ago. I had it preserved. I want you to have it back. I can't take that, Rachel said. It's not for you to keep. It's for you to remember. Remember what you did when you had nothing. Remember that kindness isn't about having extra to give. It's about giving even when you don't. She pressed it into Rachel's hand. Hang it somewhere in the restaurant. Let it remind people that the smallest act can change the world. Rachel had the $20 bill framed and hung it above the fireplace with a caption, "This is what changed everything." One evening, something unexpected happened. Victor walked in. He looked different. Thinner. Humbled. He stood nervously by the entrance. Rachel's first instinct was anger. But then she saw his hands shaking. She saw the fear in his eyes. She remembered being scared and desperate herself. Rachel walked over. Rachel, I shouldn't be here, he said quickly. I just wanted to say I'm sorry.
For everything. You don't have to believe me.
I just needed to say it. Victor, have you eaten today? He looked at the floor. Things have been hard. I'm working at a car wash now. It's fine. I deserve it. Come with me, Rachel said. She led him to the table by the fireplace and brought him food. Victor stared at it like he couldn't believe it was real. Why are you being kind to me? He whispered. After what I did? Because someone was kind to me when I needed it most, Rachel said. And I learned that kindness isn't something you earn. It's something you give freely. That's what makes it grace. That night, standing in the empty restaurant, Rachel touched the framed $20 bill gently. Thank you, Joseph, she whispered to a man she'd never met. Because kindness doesn't end with one act. It ripples outward, touching lives you'll never know about. That $20 wasn't just money. It was a seed. And what grew from it was a legacy of grace. Thanks for your watching. Don't forget to share, like, and subscribe to the Story Room for meaningful stories that inspire and teach life lessons.